Have you ever spoken from your heart, only to feel like no one was really listening? Words are everywhere, but listening is disappearing, and that's why how we speak matters more than ever. It's not the loudest voice that gets heard, it's the one that speaks with purpose. Every word we speak carries energy. Whether it's a whisper in a quiet room or a speech in front of thousands, words have power. But that power doesn't come from volume, charisma, or eloquence. It comes from intention. Most people speak to be heard, fewer speak to make others feel heard. The difference between the two is the difference between noise and influence. When you speak with the goal of being noticed, your focus turns inward. You start worrying about how you sound, what others think, whether your delivery is right, or if your story is interesting enough. You build your sentences around your ego instead of your purpose, and people can feel it. They might listen for a moment, but they won't stay, because the truth is, attention fades when the energy behind your words is self-serving. Intention, on the other hand, is outward. It's rooted in contribution, not validation. It asks, why am I saying this? Who am I trying to serve? What do I want them to feel, understand, or believe after hearing me? Intention gives words gravity. It transforms your voice from a tool of expression into a vehicle of meaning. Think about the people who have moved you with their words. They didn't just speak, they spoke for something. Their words carried purpose beyond their own gain. When someone stands on a stage and shares a message that's born from conviction, not performance, you can feel it. It doesn't just enter your ears, it enters your chest. That's the power of intention. We live in a world where attention has become currency. Likes, views, and followers measure our worth more visibly than ever. And in that chase, we often confuse speaking with performing. We tell stories not because they matter, but because they might trend. We use our voice to gain attention instead of giving it, but people are tired of noise. They don't want more information, they want connection. They want to feel seen, understood, and valued. Speaking with intention begins before the first word leaves your mouth. It starts in silence, with clarity. Ask yourself, what is the impact I want my words to have? If your purpose is to uplift, your words will sound different. If your purpose is to inspire change, your energy will align with that mission. Intention shapes not just your message, but your presence. When your intention is to add value, people can sense it. Even subconsciously, they lean in, they trust you, not because of your credentials, but because they feel your sincerity. You stop trying to dominate the room and instead start holding space for it. That shift changes everything. Your tone softens, your pace steadies, and your words become more deliberate. You're no longer trying to impress, you're trying to express something that matters. There's a profound difference between talking at people and speaking for them. Talking at people demands attention, speaking for them earns it. The first stems from fear of being ignored, dismissed, unseen. The second stems from purpose, the desire to make something better, clearer, or kinder through your words. When you speak from that place, people want to listen because they feel that what you're saying isn't about you, it's about us. Intention is also the foundation of credibility. You can teach technique, how to project your voice, how to use pauses, how to gesture. But you can't fake genuine intent. Audiences have an instinct for authenticity. They can tell when someone's words align with their heart. A well-crafted speech can impress, but only an intentional one can move. Before every conversation, presentation, or argument, pause and realign. Why am I speaking? Is it to prove I'm right, or to bring understanding? Is it to be seen, or to make a difference? Even in daily life, this awareness transforms interactions. When you argue with intention to connect rather than to win, you listen differently. You respond differently. You begin to speak not from emotion, but from empathy. The irony is that when you stop chasing attention and start speaking with intention, attention follows naturally, because people are drawn to authenticity. They can sense when words are driven by care rather than performance. You become magnetic not because you're loud, but because you're clear. Every great communicator starts with a why, not a marketing why, but a human one. The reason they stand up to speak is deeply tied to who they are and what they believe. Their words are a reflection of their values. That's why even simple messages from intentional speakers resonate more deeply than complex speeches from those who only seek applause. Intention also gives resilience to your voice. When you know why you're speaking, criticism loses its bite, doubt loses its grip, because your focus isn't on how people react, it's on the difference your words can make. You stop performing for approval and start speaking for impact. That's when communication becomes leadership. Speaking with intention doesn't mean you need to sound profound or polished. It means you need to be present. It means caring more about what others receive than how you're perceived. When your heart and your message align, your words carry an invisible strength. People may forget your phrasing, your jokes, or even your stories, but they'll remember how you made them feel. At its core, speaking with intention is an act of service. It's about using your voice to give something, not take something. Every time you open your mouth, you have two choices: to feed your ego or to feed connection. One makes noise, the other creates resonance. One seeks reaction, the other sparks reflection. Attention is temporary, intention is timeless. The goal is not to be heard once, but to be remembered for the right reasons. When you speak from intention, you don't need to demand attention. People offer it willingly because they feel your words come from truth, not performance. And truth, spoken with purpose, has a gravity that silence can't ignore. Every voice tells a story before the first word is spoken. It carries traces of what you believe, how you see the world, and what you stand for. The tone, rhythm, and presence in your voice reveal more about you than your vocabulary ever could. It's not just sound, it's signature. Your voice reflects your values, and people can hear integrity, empathy, or indifference in the way you speak long before they process the meaning of your sentences. We often underestimate how transparent we are when we speak. Our tone leaks truth. If you speak from frustration, it's felt. If you speak with compassion, it's heard. If you speak without care, the listener will know. This isn't about acting or trying to sound a certain way, it's about alignment. When what you believe, what you feel, and what you say are in harmony, your voice gains a kind of quiet authority that no training can manufacture. Consider the people whose words linger in your memory. It's rarely because of perfect diction or an impressive vocabulary. It's because you believed them. You trusted that their words were connected to something real. Their voice carried weight because their values carried through it. When someone's voice and values align, every word feels grounded. You might not agree with everything they say, but you can't deny that they mean it. In contrast, when there's a gap between a person's values and their voice, people sense it immediately. The words might be right, but something feels off. It's like a song that's out of tune. You can't always explain why it doesn't work, but you know it doesn't. That's what happens when we speak from fear, ego, or pretense instead of conviction. Our tone betrays the disconnect. We might project confidence, but without integrity behind it, our words collapse under their own weight. Your voice is an instrument of emotion. It reflects your respect for others, your empathy, your patience, your courage. A hurried tone might reveal anxiety, a dismissive tone might reveal superiority, a gentle tone might reveal compassion. We can't always control the circumstances we speak in, but we can choose what energy we bring into them. Speaking isn't only about transferring information, it's about transferring state. When your inner world is aligned with your values, that state radiates through your voice. This is why authenticity resonates so deeply. When people sense that you're being real, they stop analyzing your words and start feeling your message. Your voice becomes a bridge rather than a barrier. You no longer need to convince anyone, you simply connect. And connection is built not through performance, but through presence. Your voice doesn't just reflect what you believe about yourself. It also reflects what you believe about your audience. If you see them as equals, your tone will carry respect. If you see them as opponents, your tone will carry tension. If you see them as people worth serving, your tone will carry care. Every listener subconsciously hears how you perceive them through the way you speak to them. That's why humility in tone can be more persuasive than authority in volume. In leadership, communication, and even everyday conversation, your voice can either build trust or erode it. When your tone reflects openness, people feel safe to listen. When it reflects defensiveness, they shut down. It's not always what you say that breaks trust, it's how you say it. A kind truth can heal, a harsh truth can harm. The same message can inspire or alienate depending on whether your tone aligns with empathy or with ego. Speaking with values doesn't mean filtering your voice to sound polite all the time. It means grounding your speech in principles that matter to you. If you value honesty, let your voice sound clear and unwavering. If you value kindness, let your tone soften where it matters most. If you value courage, let your voice carry strength even when it shakes. When your voice is guided by your values, it becomes more than communication. It becomes character made audible. In moments of pressure, your voice will always reveal your foundation. When someone challenges you, do you respond with defensiveness or curiosity? When conflict arises, do you speak to prove or to understand? These moments test not just your composure, but your principles. The person who can speak with integrity under stress is the person whose values have become their default. There's also a deeper responsibility in recognizing that your voice influences the emotional state of others. Words have frequency, tone has vibration. The way you speak can either calm a room or ignite it. It can inspire someone to act or discourage them from trying. Your values decide which direction your voice takes. If your inner motive is to contribute, your tone will uplift. If your motive is to control, your tone will constrain. The difference is invisible but unmistakable. Many people try to imitate the voices of great speakers, but imitation misses the point. The goal isn't to sound like someone else, it's to sound like the truest version of yourself, because authenticity has its own music. It's not about how loud you are, it's about how aligned you are. A whisper of conviction can move more hearts than a roar of pretense. Your voice also evolves with your growth. As your values mature, your tone changes with them. When you become more self-aware, your speech gains gentleness. When you develop discipline, your words gain precision. When you cultivate gratitude, your tone gains warmth. Growth refines the sound of your soul, and the world hears it in your voice. It's easy to forget that every time you speak, you're teaching people how to perceive you. They don't just hear your ideas, they experience your integrity. Your voice is the audible form of your reputation. It can open doors or close them. It can comfort or confuse. It can elevate or diminish. The difference lies in whether your voice is anchored in what you truly believe. The most powerful voices in history were not always the most eloquent. They were the most aligned. They spoke from a place of unwavering clarity about what mattered to them. Their tone was an extension of their purpose. That's why their words survived beyond their lifetime. When values echo through a voice, they transcend time. Every time you speak, you have the opportunity to let your values be heard without ever naming them. People can hear your honesty in your tone, your respect in your pacing, your confidence in your pauses. They can hear your care in your choice of words, your humility in your willingness to listen, your conviction in your steadiness. Your voice is not separate from who you are. It's the mirror of it. And when your values and your voice speak in harmony, people don't just hear you, they feel you. We live in a world that celebrates polish. Every platform rewards the best version of us, the curated smile, the edited sentence, the flawless delivery. But when it comes to speaking so that people want to listen, perfection doesn't move hearts, authenticity does. People aren't looking for the person who never stumbles over their words or never pauses too long. They're looking for the person who speaks from a place that feels real. Because authenticity is magnetic. It draws people in, not through perfection, but through presence. When someone speaks flawlessly, we might admire them, but when someone speaks honestly, we relate to them. The difference is emotional access. Perfection builds a wall, authenticity builds a bridge. The polished speaker might impress for a moment, but the authentic one leaves an imprint. It's not because their words are better, it's because their humanity is visible in their words. Authenticity begins with self-acceptance. You can't speak genuinely if you're still performing for approval. Every time you try to sound like someone else, you silence your own voice. The best communicators aren't perfect. They're congruent. Their words, tone, and body language align with who they really are. They don't hide behind scripts. They reveal themselves through stories, and that revelation, raw, imperfect, unfiltered, is what people crave in a world addicted to pretense. Perfection is fragile. It demands control over every detail, your tone, your phrasing, your gestures, but people don't connect with control, they connect with emotion. Think of the moments that have moved you most deeply. Chances are they weren't cleanly delivered. They were messy, vulnerable, real. Maybe someone's voice cracked as they spoke about something that mattered. Maybe they hesitated, searching for the right words, but choosing instead the honest ones. In that imperfection, you felt truth, and truth always travels farther than technique. Authenticity isn't about oversharing or speaking without thought. It's about allowing your real self to exist in the space between you and your audience. It's about honesty over image. When you speak from that place, people sense that your message isn't rehearsed, it's remembered. It's drawn from lived experience, not borrowed wisdom. You don't have to convince anyone, you simply remind them of something they already know but may have forgotten. There's also freedom in being authentic. When you stop trying to sound perfect, you release the fear of being judged. You start to focus on impact rather than impression. You start listening as much as you speak. You stop chasing the applause and start nurturing connection. And that shift changes not just how others hear you, but how you hear yourself. Many people think authenticity means speaking casually, as if unprepared. But real authenticity comes with intention. It's not carelessness. It's alignment. It's knowing who you are and standing comfortably in it. When you speak from that place, your tone naturally balances confidence with humility. You're grounded. You're not trying to dominate the space. You're trying to share it. Authenticity also invites vulnerability, and vulnerability is the heartbeat of trust. When you admit you don't know everything, when you acknowledge a mistake, when you share a story that exposes not just your success but your struggle, people don't see weakness. They see courage. They see someone willing to be human in a world that often hides behind facades. That kind of honesty doesn't lower your authority, it deepens it, because people trust what feels human far more than what looks perfect. There's an unspoken rule in communication. People will only go as deep with you as you are willing to go with them. If you stay on the surface, they will too, but if you speak from a place of truth, they'll meet you there. Authenticity opens emotional permission. It tells others it's safe to be real here, and that safety is what turns listeners into believers. When you try too hard to sound perfect, you create distance. People start focusing on your performance instead of your message. They might applaud your skill, but they won't remember your story. Authenticity, on the other hand, dissolves that distance. It makes the listener feel part of the conversation, not a spectator of it. They stop evaluating and start engaging. Authentic speaking also transforms how we handle failure. When perfection is the goal, mistakes feel like collapse. But when authenticity is the goal, mistakes become connection points. A mispronounced word, a nervous laugh, a forgotten line. These moments remind your audience that you're one of them, and paradoxically, that humility amplifies your impact. Because people don't listen to you for your flawlessness, they listen to you for your humanness. Authenticity is not just what you say, it's how you listen. The authentic communicator doesn't just wait for their turn to speak, they pay attention. They respond, adapt, and connect in real time. They're not reciting, they're relating. That presence, that willingness to meet others where they are, makes every word carry more meaning. The temptation to polish every word comes from fear. The fear of being misunderstood, rejected, or judged. But that fear itself becomes the barrier between you and your audience. When you embrace imperfection, you disarm that fear. You replace performance with purpose. You start speaking less to impress and more to express. And people listen differently when they sense that your words are not crafted for applause but for connection. Authenticity also means consistency. It's not enough to sound genuine in one moment and detached in another. The way you speak, write, and act should come from the same root. Your audience, whether it's one person or 1,000, should feel that who you are on stage is who you are off stage. That integrity builds trust faster than any rhetorical skill ever could. We often believe that credibility is earned through expertise, but in truth, it's sustained through authenticity. Expertise might open the door, but authenticity keeps people in the room, because people don't just want information, they want meaning. They don't just want someone who knows, they want someone who feels, someone who speaks from lived conviction rather than borrowed confidence. Authenticity is contagious. When one person dares to speak truthfully, it gives others permission to do the same. In that way, authentic communication doesn't just transfer ideas. It transforms environments. It invites openness, collaboration, and honesty. A single authentic voice can shift the tone of an entire room because truth, once spoken, makes pretension impossible. The irony is that authenticity requires more courage than perfection ever will. Perfection hides behind preparation. Authenticity stands exposed. It risks being seen, judged, even misunderstood. But that risk is what gives it power. People don't remember those who spoke flawlessly. They remember those who spoke fearlessly. And fearlessness, in its truest form, is simply the willingness to be real. Every time you speak, whether it's in a conversation, a meeting, or on a stage, you are faced with a subtle choice, to perform or to connect. Performance seeks approval, connection seeks understanding. Performance says, "Look at me." Connection says, "I see you." The first may capture attention for a moment, but the second captures hearts for much longer. The true art of speaking isn't about dazzling an audience. It's about making them feel something real. People often confuse great speaking with great performing. They think charisma is the secret ingredient, that volume, confidence, and perfectly timed gestures will hold a crowd. But people don't stay for style. They stay for sincerity. Performance is about the spotlight. Connection is about the space between you and those listening. When you choose connection over performance, you stop trying to impress and start trying to reach. Connection begins with empathy. Before you open your mouth, ask yourself, what might my audience need right now? What are they feeling? What would serve them best? That single shift from self-focus to audience focus changes everything. It changes your tone, your pacing, your choice of words. It softens the edges of your ego and replaces performance anxiety with purpose. You stop performing to prove something, and you start speaking to give something. When you perform, you measure success by reaction, by applause, agreement, or validation. When you connect, you measure success by resonance, by that quiet moment when someone's eyes soften because something you said just landed in the truth of their experience. That's the kind of success that lingers long after the conversation ends. Connection doesn't require you to be extraordinary, it requires you to be human. People listen when they feel seen, not when they're being talked at. The best communicators don't fill the room with noise. They fill it with presence. They listen as much as they speak. They allow silence. They make space for others. When you're focused on performance, silence feels like failure. When you're focused on connection, silence becomes an ally. It gives the other person time to feel what you just said. Every audience, no matter its size, wants one thing: to feel that you're with them, not above them. When you perform, you create distance. You stand on a metaphorical stage, elevated, separate. When you connect, you dissolve that distance. You might still be on a stage, but emotionally, you're sitting right next to them. They don't feel lectured, they feel understood. That's why connection has more power than performance. It builds belonging. There's a quiet strength in speakers who connect. They don't need to shout. They don't need to dominate. Their calmness commands attention because it's rooted in authenticity. They're not trying to win over the audience. They're trying to walk with them. They tell stories not to entertain but to illuminate. They use emotion not as manipulation but as translation, to help others feel what they've felt, to bridge the gap between experiences. When you focus on connection, even your imperfections start to work in your favor. A stumble, a pause, a nervous laugh. These small human moments remind people that you're not performing a role, you're sharing yourself. They relax, they lean in, they trust you, because no one relates to perfection, but everyone relates to honesty. A flawless performance might be impressive, but it's also forgettable. A flawed but heartfelt message, on the other hand, stays. Connection also means presence. You can't connect with people if you're lost in your head, worrying about how you're doing. True presence requires letting go of control. It means listening to the room, adapting in real time, sensing when people are engaged and when they're not, and adjusting, not to please them, but to reach them. Connection is a living exchange. Performance is a script. The best communicators know how to read energy, not just notes. Think about a time when someone spoke and you felt like they were talking directly to you, even in a crowd. That feeling didn't come from the size of their words. It came from the depth of their intention. They weren't speaking at you, they were speaking with you. They made you feel part of the message. That's what connection does. It makes every listener feel personally included in a shared moment. In contrast, performance often creates a facade. It can be dazzling, but it's hollow underneath. You might win applause, but you lose authenticity. You might gain followers, but not trust. Connection asks for courage. The courage to be genuine, the courage to let go of scripted lines, the courage to feel what you're saying as you say it. When your emotions are real, people's responses are real too. The truth is, connection can't be faked. Audiences, colleagues, even friends, they all sense it when you're pretending. They can tell when your smile is rehearsed or your enthusiasm is forced. That's why genuine energy has such a strong pull. It's rare. It's raw, it's real. When people hear truth in your tone, they stop evaluating your performance and start joining your experience. Connection doesn't mean you abandon structure or preparation. It means you use structure as a frame, not a cage. You prepare so well that you can forget the script and just be there. You speak from memory, not memorization. The words might change, but the message stays alive because you're present with it. That's what keeps your speech dynamic. It's not performance energy, it's connection energy. In every meaningful conversation, there's an unspoken dance between speaker and listener. When you perform, you lead every step and leave no room for the other. When you connect, you move together, you adapt. You listen to the rhythm of the room, you make others feel that their presence shapes the message too. That sense of collaboration, even in silence, turns a one-way monologue into a shared experience. Performance thrives on perfection, connection thrives on emotion. The performer wants to be admired, the connector wants to be understood, and people crave understanding. They want to feel that someone is speaking not to them but for them. That your story, your insight, your struggle somehow echoes their own. When you can create that mirror, your words become more than sound, they become reflection. Connection also endures. A performance ends when the curtain falls or the talk concludes, but a connection lives on. People carry it with them, not as a memory of your delivery, but as a feeling tied to your message. They might forget your exact words, but they won't forget the truth you made them feel. That is what gives your voice staying power, the ability to resonate beyond the moment. When you stop performing and start connecting, your role shifts from being the star of the show to being the guide of the experience. You lead people not to your brilliance, but to their own insight. You don't say, "Listen to me." You say, "Come with me." And in that simple invitation, you turn speech into relationship. And your words become not just something people hear, but something they feel deeply enough to remember in a world obsessed with constant communication. Silence feels uncomfortable. We fill every pause, every breath, every space with words, as if quiet makes us invisible. But true speakers, the ones who move people, not just talk to them, understand that silence isn't the absence of sound, it's the presence of meaning. Silence is part of speech. It gives words their shape, their rhythm, their gravity. Without silence, language is noise. With it, language becomes music. Most people fear silence because it feels like loss of control. The moment there's a pause, anxiety creeps in. Are they bored? Did I say something wrong? Should I keep talking? But silence doesn't break connection. It deepens it. It gives listeners a chance to absorb, to reflect, to breathe. It gives you, the speaker, a moment to center yourself, to think before you add more words to the world. The paradox of silence is that it amplifies what truly matters. It's not the gap between your words, it's the space where they take root. Think about music. The beauty of a song doesn't come from constant sound. It comes from timing, from the pauses between notes that make the melody breathe. Silence is what creates rhythm and anticipation. The same principle applies to speech. When you speak without pause, your words blur together, leaving no room for your audience to feel. But when you use silence intentionally, your message lands deeper. The pause becomes punctuation, and the listener's mind fills the space with meaning. Silence also reveals confidence. Those who trust their message aren't afraid of pauses. They know that stillness doesn't weaken their voice, it strengthens it. In contrast, when someone rushes through their words, it signals insecurity. They're afraid the audience might turn away if they stop speaking. but confident speakers understand that silence keeps attention, not loses it. The pause says, I know what I'm saying matters enough to let it breathe. Every great communicator learns to listen to their own silence as much as their speech. They don't rush to respond. They give themselves the grace to think, and they give others the respect to be heard. In conversation, silence becomes a sign of presence. When you pause and listen instead of interrupting, you're saying, I value your words as much as my own. That kind of silence is not empty, it's generous. It holds space for others to step in, to share, to feel safe. Silence also creates trust. When someone speaks constantly, filling every moment with noise, people sense fear beneath it. The fear of vulnerability, of being misunderstood, of losing relevance. But when someone can sit comfortably in silence, it signals security. It says, I don't need to prove myself through words, and that steadiness builds credibility. It draws people in because they can sense that your voice comes from stillness, not struggle. There's a quiet discipline in learning how to pause. It's not easy. It takes restraint, patience, and presence. The pause before a key message tells your audience something important is coming. The pause after it tells them something important just arrived. Silence works like bold font in conversation. It highlights what matters, but unlike bold letters, silence doesn't shout, it invites. It allows your listener to interpret, to feel, to internalize. Silence also reflects emotional intelligence. When tension rises, when conversations get heated, silence can be the most powerful response. It disarms hostility, it diffuses anger, it gives space for emotions to settle before logic returns. Sometimes the wisest thing you can say is nothing at all. Because silence, when chosen with intention, communicates more than any argument could. It says, I hear you, and I'm thinking. It replaces reaction with reflection. Our culture rewards those who speak fast, who fill air with certainty, who never hesitate. But speed isn't connection. Connection happens in the still moments between thoughts. When you slow down enough to pause, you give your audience permission to slow down too. You remind them that conversation isn't a race. It's a rhythm. It's not about dominating the airspace, but sharing it. Silence turns speaking into dialogue, not monologue. In teaching, leadership, and storytelling, silence has the same power. A teacher who pauses after a question invites curiosity. A leader who pauses after a statement invites trust. A storyteller who pauses before a reveal invites emotion. The silence becomes the listener's space, a shared canvas where imagination and understanding can unfold. Without silence, there's no space for others to participate in meaning-making. Silence is also the birthplace of authenticity. When you pause before you speak, you give your intuition a moment to rise. You allow your words to come from alignment rather than impulse. Most of the things we regret saying are the ones we didn't pause before speaking. Silence protects you from reaction and connects you to intention. It lets you choose words that reflect clarity rather than chaos. There's another layer to silence, the internal one. Before you can use silence with others, you have to make peace with it within yourself. Many people fill silence externally because they can't handle it internally. They fear their own thoughts, their own doubts, their own emotions. But when you learn to sit in your own stillness without needing to fill it, your voice gains power. Because you're no longer speaking from noise, you're speaking from depth. Silence also reveals truth. When you pause after asking a question, people often fill that space with honesty. The momentary quiet invites reflection. It tells the listener you're not just waiting for your turn to speak, you're genuinely interested. In that space, guards come down and real connection begins. Silence, used well, doesn't just make communication effective, it makes it humane. When you speak continuously, your words compete with each other for attention. But when you use silence wisely, each idea gets its moment to shine. The pause becomes a signal to your audience. This matters, listen here. Great communicators don't fear quiet. They wield it like an artist uses negative space. They understand that what's unsaid can be just as powerful as what's spoken. Silence isn't about muting your message, it's about magnifying it. It's about trusting that your words carry enough weight to stand on their own without constant reinforcement. It's about recognizing that communication isn't just a transaction of sound, it's a balance of sound and stillness, thought and pause, speaking and listening. The moments between words are not interruptions, they're invitations. They're where understanding grows, where emotion settles, where meaning takes root. The pause, the breath, the quiet moment before you continue. These are not signs of hesitation, but of respect. Respect for the listener, for the message, and for the moment itself. When you begin to see silence not as a void to be filled, but as a vital part of expression, your communication transforms. You start to hear your own words differently. You start to see that silence is not your enemy in speaking. It's your most powerful partner. The ability to speak so that people want to listen isn't a skill reserved for the gifted. It's a choice, a mindset, a practice of presence. It begins with intention, not attention, because your purpose shapes your words long before your voice is heard. It continues through the values you carry, the authenticity you embrace, and the connections you create. And it finds its power not in endless words, but in the courage to pause and let silence speak with you. When you speak with intention, people don't just hear your message, they feel your meaning. When your voice reflects your values, your words carry integrity that can't be faked. When you choose authenticity over perfection, you invite trust instead of judgment. When you focus on connection instead of performance, you turn communication into relationship. And when you allow silence to frame your words, you give them weight that lingers long after the sound fades. To speak so that people want to listen is not about mastering performance. It's about embodying presence. It's about letting your voice become a reflection of your humanity, your empathy, and your purpose. Because in the end, people don't remember how perfectly you spoke. They remember how deeply you made them feel, and that is where true influence begins. Not in the power to speak louder, but in the grace to speak with heart.